Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Committee of the Whole meeting on February 28th, 2022. Before we start, I will remind council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. I will now do a roll call of council for the benefit of the public watching this evening. I, Councillor Shantz, am present and chairing this meeting. Mayor Shantz.
I'm present.
Councillor Martin.
Present.
Councillor McMillan.
Present.
And Councillor Vanderhoff.
Present.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'm present as well.
Councillor Millihan. Sorry about that, buddy. The council reconvenes in open session, so can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Mayor Shantz and Councillor McMillan, all in favor? And that is carried. I'd like to read our land acknowledgement. The land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial. People have inhabited southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we acknowledge the neutral people, also called Adawandran, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee, people who lived here when settlers arrived and who shared this land with us. May we together learn to care for and respect each other, our flora and fauna, and the land we inhabit together. And at this point, I'll turn the floor over to Mayor Shantz.
Thank you, Chair Shantz. I just want on behalf of the township and myself to express my horror and dismay at the occupation of Ukraine by the Russian forces. I just can't imagine what it would be like to wake up having a normal day and wake up the next morning to hear bombs falling. And I struggled with what to write here. I couldn't find words, but our hearts are with the people of Ukraine in Europe and here in Canada and all around the world as we wish them strength in the days to come.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Do any members of council have any declaration of pecuniary interests? Seeing none, we have no items to come forward from closed session, nothing for public meeting, no presentations, no delegations, and no unfinished business. Consent items. Before we pass the motion to receive the consent agenda as a whole, does anyone wish to remove any items for further discussion? Not seeing any of the can I have a motion that the following consent agenda be received for information? Councillor Martin and Councillor Vanderhoff. And any discussion? No, and I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Staff reports and memos. This evening, we have Manager of Planning, Jeremy Vink, to provide council with an overview of his report. Mayor Vink.
Chair,
Mr.
Chair, member of the council. This is just a report to bring to your attention that at the end of 2021, the province did a number of changes, number of acts, but one of them was the Planning Act. And in it, they allowed for the council to delegate authority for some minor zoning applications down to different levels. So they did allow us under the section 34 of the Planning Act, which is the zoning section, that items of a minor nature could be delegated to a committee of council or an individual who is an officer of the municipality. So with that, we gave you some of the wording that was in the act under the comments there, just the wording, what it could mean minor, could mean the lifting of holding provisions or the authorization of temporary uses as an example, but not necessarily limited to those. And for example, so council could, for example, do nothing and continue to operate in the same fashion they have and just not delegate the authority down. You could delegate some things down to the Committee of Adjustment, for example, as a committee of council. Or you could delegate these items down, these minor items down to staff for decision making. So why would you do that? It's all part of the process to maybe speed things up, so we don't have to wait for council meetings, especially in summertime operations, etc., where certain items like these could move forward very quickly then and not be held back. And that would help the applicants who are going through this process, as well as those items in and around that for just timing and speed and costs. So staff are giving you some ideas of what might be considered minor in the report beyond just the lifting of holding provisions and temporary uses. There could be some other minor things along, like say some of the agricultural uses where if they're proposing some minor changes, staff, you could delegate it down towards staff level. What we do see here, the value is the opportunity that we could do this. We wouldn't recommend, and in this case, we wouldn't recommend delegating down to a committee, because similar to how council operates, the committees operate, and there's limitations on bringing reports and timing and when committees meet. So we would suggest, if council was willing to consider it, that they look forward to delegating it down to a staff member, such as the director, to make decisions on these minor items. As we move forward, the recommendation here is not to do this immediately, but at this point, we're suggesting that you delegate this as we move forward into our next official plan review, starting at the end of this year and into 2023. We look to add that wording into our delegation, into the official plan, to allow for that delegation of authority. It'd be very broad wording. And then once the official plan is approved and amended, council would then need to pass a bylaw formally, which would get into the nuts and bolts about what exactly would be delegated down to a committee or staff, in that sense of what items would be delegated. So that's staff's just recommendation to council, to suggest that we look forward to moving this into the OP review when we start it later this year. To this is all said and done into our new official plan in a few years, we can then do the bylaw for delegation of authority. If there's any questions, staff can answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Vink. Not Mayor Vink, but Mr. Vink. Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Vink? Councilor Merlihan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Councilor Shantz, to Mr. Vink. Yeah, I don't have any problem with delegating down to staff. I guess if that speeds things up for applicants to do minor things, then that sounds like a good thing. The only question I would have is if a resident, I guess, if staff decide that whatever the project isn't minor, or says you can't do it, I guess at that point, would it come back to council then? Or does the staff member, the senior staff member, is the voice of council at that point, and then it would go to land tribunal if the resident chose to go that way?
Definitely a very good question. So back to through you, Mr. Chair, down to Councilor Merlihan. I would assume that because you're delegating the authority down to them, that you're giving them, that staff member, the right to make the decision. You're passing on your decision making. I would expect, like many things, such as the delegation we do with site plans, which is already happening, is that if there is some issues or concerns, council could be approached to say, hey, can you talk to staff about where they're going with this direction? And it might come back to council in some form or fashion before a final decision was made, necessarily at the staff level that was formalized, right? So just like site plans, if there's a bit of conflict, sometimes it ends up at council for some discussion or direction before a final decision is made. And like I mentioned, there's certain things that maybe council would see as very simple items that we would pass off one at a time, but we definitely try to keep it to those items that would be minor in nature, right? So.
Okay, well, it sounds like a good direction anyway to get the process started. Thanks.
Councilor McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Shantz. Through you, one of the specific things that had come up early in my time on council, we haven't seen it much lately, was people applying for allowances for secondary dwelling on a property. A lot of people using like modular homes or mobile homes on a farm property. And I think we had like 6 in my first 18 months, and they were all just kind of quickly approved by council. And that was, I think Councilor Merlehan asked if that could be delegated to staff. So I was wondering if that was one of the specific items that might be enveloped by this new policy or this opportunity rather.
Definitely, Mr. Chair, to Councillor McMillan, definitely one of those items, because they were generally, those were temporary uses, and they would be one of those things that could be considered minor and delegated down to staff. We don't see as much of them right now because we've legalized the accessory dwelling units, so people don't have to go through the modular units as much. That doesn't mean they won't be the odd one here and there, but definitely something that is a good example of what could be delegated down.
Perfect, thank you.
Councilor Redekop, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with this direction of the staff. It makes our council meetings and committees of the whole more efficient, and I'm in favor of it.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Not see. Oh, Councilor Merlehan.
I'll just move the recommendation as written.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councilor McMillan? All those in favor? And that is passed. Thank you. Next, we have the Manager of Operations and Projects, Thomas Vanderhoff, with us this evening to provide council with an overview on his report. Thomas, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Shantz. Through you to council. So staff have before you this evening a bit of an update report on the Maryhill Fire Station construction, renovation, or new. There's much discussion on this through budget deliberations, but this is, I guess, the first formal report before council. So the report does just aim to provide a little bit of background for council on kind of what led staff to the position and the direction that we took through the renovation. Speaks to some existing feasibility study by an architect, as well as some discussion with a local design builder and our current architect consultants as well too. Council is well aware that the tender did close over 1.7 million, and we have an approved capital budget in 2022 for 1.4 million. That did close much higher than anticipated, the estimates that we were provided. And as a result, staff have taken a bit of a deep dive on both the design build and the design bid build processes for fire stations specifically, looking at a number of construction projects, not only the design bid build route, but like I said, the design build route as well too, in costing for those. We have also spoken with a few design builders, as well as met with one on site as well too, to look at the project of a renovation, which they did see through the tender as well too, however didn't bid. Taking a look at the site and a potential replacement, costing is anticipated to come in roughly around $300 a square foot, and that does include site works as well as demolition of the existing building. We had anticipated hoping to reduce the cost per square foot for the renovation to a cost of $400 per square foot. So when we look at those two costs, and like I said, with some discussion with design builders, we're fairly confident in the recommendation that we have before you, which is to forgo award of the tender for the renovation and proceed with developing an RFP for a new construction through a design build process. And also, we are requesting to retain Valley Architects, who has intimate knowledge of the project and a great deal of information and studies and whatnot that can be carried over into the new RFP. So we are requesting to retain them and continue to work with them. They would assist us with the RFP development as well as the project administration, and costs for their services are estimated to be 4 to 5%, so $70,000. Before HST would be on the 5% mark. And then also just speaking to the schedule as well too, I think we would be crossing our fingers to hope that this could be completed in 2022. But in speaking again with some contractors, that is a possibility depending on how fast we would be able to get the RFP out on the streets and awarded. 2023 may be a reality though. Just want council to be aware of that. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that the council might have.
Council, questions? Councilor Martin?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Thomas. I'm certainly pleased with the direction we're going. I think it's the right way to go. So my one question would be, will fire department staff be involved in the design and the layout of the new building?
Yeah, through you, Chair Shantz, to Councilor Martin. Yeah, we will involve staff more throughout the process. You know, we have already sat down at the table and looked at some designs, truthfully, you know, that are likely to be replicated and submitted for this project. So we do, and also through the functional program through fire staff, you know, we do have a really good sense of what they're looking for. There were some shortfalls, as council's aware, with using the existing building, one being the size of the bay that was remaining, and then elimination of the cistern as well too. So we'll look to include those, and but yes, we will have them at the table throughout the design process.
Go ahead, Councilor Martin.
Yeah, can I have a follow-up question?
Go ahead.
I know fire department staff, at least Chief Carley, was very pleased with the fire hall in St. Clements when we went to tour that. And we were supposed to be getting those drawings, and I checked with Chief Carter today and he said he hasn't got them yet, or I'm not sure who is going to get them. Will we have those drawings and take a look at them?
Through you, Chair Shantz, to Councilor Martin. Yeah, we can do that. I would suspect that I believe that building was constructed by Fry Brothers. I would suspect that we would forward the RFP invitation to them. And I think, as I mentioned in the report, the chances are that, you know, some of these buildings get replicated elsewhere just for cost savings for the design builders. But yeah, we can obtain those, and we've looked at some other fire stations with fire staff as well too. And I think we're all on the same page, staff and the volunteers at this point in time. So
It's good.
Go ahead, Councilor Martin.
Having heard all that, I'd be pleased to move the recommendation.
Is there other comments from staff? Councilor Redekop?
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
Okay.
But I have a question for Thomas. Could you
Go ahead.
explain to us about what happens in the meantime? Will the fire station be demolished and then other fire companies will help out in response? Can you just, I know it's in the report, but I just wanted to hear it in public.
yeah, through you, Chair Shantz, to Councilor Redekop. Hopefully I answer this correctly. The plan would likely be to shift the department to probably the Breslau station during construction. We've looked at maybe opportunities for keeping them on site, but really just based on the size of the site, it's a very small site and space is limited. And with the septic kind of taking up, you know, a third of the site as well too, it creates some challenges. So in speaking with design builders as well too, they've kind of suggested probably best to relocate during construction.
Okay, thanks very much.
Councilor Merlehan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Thomas. I just wanted to talk about the Valley Architect portion of the report. Do we feel obligated to use them because they did some studies, and are those studies not Woolwich Township studies that we've already paid for that we could use if we potentially wanted to go somewhere else or use the design builder people that typically would run a site?
Yeah, through you, Chair Shantz, to Councilor Merlehan. So I think that as I mentioned during budget deliberations, it's a staff feel it's necessary for us to retain a consultant to kind of oversee the project management side of things. And With that being said, so a few points here in terms of timing. It's definitely easiest for us to pivot as quickly as possible if we retain Valley. We'd be willing to start next week, set up a meeting for next week and get going on the RFP so that we can get it issued by the end of March. We're not obligated to continue to use them. We have 37,765 remaining on that contract. So there would definitely need to be some discussion with them about those funds. But when we look at what we're owing, what we owe them, what's remaining, and a 4 to 5% project admin fees, we would be coming in anywhere between mid 50s to a high of 70,000. So we're looking at an additional, let's say, $35,000 to $45,000 in fees for them. We could use we have paid for all those studies, geo and whatnot, site plan, that sort of thing. That is ours to use. And also I should add too, in speaking with design build contractors, it's very common for townships of our size, that sort of thing, to have some representation on the project management side. And actually they had, welcomed the idea for us to continue to work with Valley just based on their knowledge of the project.
Okay, so the 70,000, the anticipation, that's not on top of this. You're just looking to, the 70,000 will be, because you've already paid them so much, the 37 is basically what you're on the hook for, or is there going to be, is the 70,000 on top of the 37?
Through you, Chair Sean. So we have 37,000 remaining in our existing contract with them. The total would be 70 less 37. So an additional, we'll say 35 to 45.
Okay.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just, 70,000 for 6 months of babysitting some construction seems like a really good deal for the person doing the babysitting. Anybody's built a house, yeah, it's a lot of work keeping on top of things and, figuring out where your lights are going to go. But, I'd certainly take that job in a heartbeat for 70,000 for 6 months. But anyway, it's not that. You're just going to stick to that. So I'm fine with that direction then. And I'm glad that we're going this route rather than the renovation. I guess the last thing I would say on this is, and this is the first time, and we have built other buildings, and it never really came up where there was these two processes of design build and then have a company that has, they come and do the whole thing. And I didn't realize until now that there are two separate things and they both come with, different amounts of pay. So I guess in the future, before we take on any more of these projects, it'd be nice to, have that discussion beforehand rather than right before we're about to say yes to a project, and explore all the options so we know what's even available. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Any other comments from council? I do have a comment, and I have to echo the same thing that Councillor Martin said, that I'm glad that we're going this direction. And I also have to echo what Councillor Merlehan said, and I guess I'm disappointed with Valley Architects that they wouldn't have come to us at some point and said, this is getting out of hand. We could do this a lot cheaper by design build. And I guess I had the concern that we're using them again after going through that process. And it would have been nice if they would have come to us and said, this is getting pretty expensive. It's getting into the area where we could tear the building down and rebuild it. So that's just my comment. So if there's no other comments, we have a motion on the floor, and I'll call for the question. All in favor? And that is passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any reports from council? Mayor Shantz, you had a report you wanted to bring forward?
Yeah, I just, excuse me, wanted to bring forward, I guess it's actually a notice of motion. I've met with the province and had input to the feds as well for their pre-budget consultation. And at that time I was focusing on items that were within our purview, but listening to some of the other presentations that were made, I would like to bring a motion forward that we request from the federal and the provincial government to provide more support for mental health organizations in this budget and not wait until some future budget. I think that we're seeing an increase in mental health issues across the township, across the region, across the province, probably around the world, coming out of this COVID. And so their request was that they do not have enough supports to provide support for everyone. So I would like to get staff to craft the proper wording for a motion and bring it to the council meeting next week.
Okay, thank you. Do you want some discussion on that, or council want to make comments?
Sure, if council has any comments.
Councilor Merlehan?
I can certainly support a motion in that regard. Just through this pandemic, I have personal friends that have experienced mental health issues in the last 2 years. Their children, eating disorders, suicide, the whole gamut. It has affected, a lot of people that I know personally. So, and getting help is the biggest stumbling block. In some cases, there just isn't any help and people are on their own. So we're definitely way behind in helping people. So if a motion will move that along, certainly I will do anything to make that happen.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Martin?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for probably a week or two already, and I was going to say something last week, and it's probably too late. This whole idea that the Ontario government is going to scrap license plate stickers, I think is a ridiculous idea. Number one, how are they going to collect fines that outstanding if you have no stickers? And from what I understand, it's going to cost the province about $1 billion a year. I think that money can be used a lot better for people that need shelter. There's lots of people that need food. There's people that need clothing. Throw mental health in there. They could take that $1 billion and divide it between municipalities, and we could get a lot better use out of it than that. Now, I know some people will argue and say the $120 you save, will go a long way because it's money in your pocket. When it comes down to it, it'll buy 1.5 tanks full of fuel. Next week, it'll buy 1.25 the way it's going. So I just think there's a whole lot better way to use that $1 billion. That's my thought.
Thank you. You must have a small tank. Councilor McMillan?
Thanks, Chair Shantz. Thank you, Mayor Shantz, for bringing this notice of motion forward. I think that it's definitely something that we can all support. And I just had to jump in and say that I agree completely with Councilor Martin. I don't know if the mayor's motion is going to get specifically and where the funding can come from, but I agree $1 billion can be spent a lot better than getting rid of the license plate stickers. So thanks for that addition, Councilor Martin.
Thank you. I guess you have direction. Staff can bring back a motion. Any other business from the region level or no? Councilor Merlehan?
Yeah, sorry, I missed this when we were doing correspondence because I got caught up on the consent item and went, no, there's nothing there. And then there was stuff. I was wondering, we had all received emails from a counselor, something or other that I forget his name, about disbanding the Ontario Land Tribunal. There's a number of ones in our correspondence from different municipalities, and I've talked to planning staff about those particular motions, and they're not super supportive. They, if they think yes, things should be there could be some improvements to it, but they don't think it's a good idea to disband entirely. But this week, the town of Gravenhurst, their resolution they went in a different route. It's not looking for a disbanding, but they are looking for, I'm sorry, basically, it's really long. It's 3 pages. So, but they're basically looking and asking the province to take a look at the OLT and how it operates, because the OLT is now a mechanism for developers to bypass local planning. And as the Gravenhurst motion talks about, we spend millions of dollars on official plans and all sorts of special attention to area, when then developers can come in and say, well, we want to do this. Oh, you won't let us? We're going to the OLT. And then it's a very costly process. We know just from our own experience that that is kind of how it works now. And they know that they have an option to go around local planning. So I was wondering if council, the rest of council would support supporting the Gravenhurst motion that they have. And if you haven't had time to read it, because it is really long, maybe we can bring it back another week or hear from our planning staff about what this motion has to say. But I feel like it's something that we should certainly look at.
Okay, thank you. I'll take responsibility for that, Councillor Merlehan, that I threw you off on roll call. That's how you missed it. So, Councillor McMillan, did you have a comment before we hear from Ms. Freeze?
If Mayor Shonks wants to go first, I can go after her.
Mayor Shantz?
I was just going to just a couple of things. First of all, ask Ms. Freeze to weigh in on this particular motion. I guess when I read the resolution from Gravenhurst, they're dissolving the OLT immediately and then sort of looking at some other appeal process. So I have a few concerns about that kind of timing and what happens in the meantime. But I'd like to hear from Ms. Freeze.
Okay, Councillor McMillan first.
Yeah, can I go before Ms. Freeze so that she can comment on my comments as well, please?
Sure.
One of the things I like about this request is it talks about how the OLT is used to add red tape and bureaucracy to limit attainable housing being built. And I think that if we look at how it's used in ways to get things like gravel pits developed and affordable and attainable housing projects stopped. And I think that is completely counterproductive to what we actually value as municipalities in Ontario. So I like that they actually address how the mechanism is being used and how it's counterproductive to our values and our vision.
Okay, Ms. Freeze, do you want to add something there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think that there has been a lot of discussion about this. I know it's come forward in a number of different municipalities about this motion that was originally drafted by, I think, the Township of Aurora to dissolve the OLT. And the planning heads meetings, we have had some discussions about it as well. And I think that it's pretty consistent between all the planning heads that we all see that there are some efficiencies that definitely could be made with the OLT, but dissolving the OLT just as a whole without anything to replace it or out any other alternative is not something that I think any of the planning heads that went through our discussions would support. However, I think that it makes sense for me to take this back to the planning heads group. So that would be the region, the cities and the townships, and maybe put together some joint correspondence that we could send with some suggestions for what improvements could be made to the OLT and bring that back to council.
Thank you. Councillor Merlehan, you okay with that, or you've got a comment?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. It's just if I could ask a question to Ms. Freeze. Is it true that Ontario is the only province in Canada that has this type of tribunal where, you know, the other provinces don't have an appeal body like the OLT that can override local decision-making?
So it is my understanding that there are other types of appeal bodies in other provinces. So they're not called the OLT, and they differ in different ways. But there is other appeal mechanisms with different types of boards with different names that they have. So it is something that I can take a look at further and find out what the differences are with the other provinces versus Ontario as well. But I don't know exactly what all the intricacies are.
Okay, and I'm just glad to have this conversation. If we could come up and craft a motion that, you know, asks for improvements and we could cite specific things that, you know, we're seeing here at a municipal level and a regional level, then, you know, I think that would be much stronger than just saying, oh, we like this one here and going with it. But I'm glad to have the conversation.
Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, I certainly understand the desire to not just, you know, burn everything to the ground until there's a path forward. Fundamentally, the OLT was created so that if there was something that was in the greater good of the province, we couldn't all just say, not in my backyard. If there was an immense shortage in gravel that we couldn't build projects because there weren't enough gravel pits, you couldn't just have every municipality say no gravel pits here at all. But what we're seeing is an overabundance of gravel pits, far exceeding the demand. And then we're seeing a lack of what we actually need, which is attainable and affordable housing. So I certainly respect the idea that, hey, we need a replacement here. But we can't nibble around the edges with this thing because it's completely inverted what it was actually supposed to do. So I'm in favor of waiting for sure, but I think that it's going to be tough to see where we can have some improvements and efficiencies when it's actually just completely inverted what it's supposed to do.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Merlehan?
Sorry, just a request. Could we put this on the activity list, just so we don't forget about it? I'd like if we could deal with it, you know, in I don't know, the next month or so. That'd be great. I don't know what the meeting schedules are like for getting all the planning people together, but thanks.
And are you okay with leaving Gravenhurst at this point?
Yeah, we can leave that if we craft our own locally motion, that would probably be stronger and great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other council reports or anything you want to bring forward? Councillor Martin?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with the comments that Mayor Shantz made at the beginning of the meeting concerning Ukraine. I don't know if in my lifetime if I've ever seen anything of this type of aggression into another country as we're seeing now. I can't even believe what it'd be like living there. I know some people that do live there that had to flee, and it must be devastating. And all these people that are gathering in solidarity and waving flags, you know, doesn't do a thing to solve anything or to help the people that need help. So I would propose that we take $10,000 out of our budget and forward it to MCC because they have a good program to help the people in Ukraine.
And you're bringing that as a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that?
Can't.
Councillor McMillan?
No, not seconded. I don't think we can just put a motion on the floor. We would need, I think, a 2/3 vote to to have a motion that's not on the agenda.
When did that change?
Yeah, that's why we have notice of motion. That's why Mayor Shant's motion was a notice of motion, just a procedural thing.
Mayor Shantz, you had or Clerk Smith, can you help us out here?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We would typically have a notice of motion for something like this. If council wished to waive the requirements of the procedural bylaw, there is a provision to do that by 2/3 majority, which I think is what Councillor McMillan was speaking to. But if Councillor Martin wishes to add this as a notice of motion, we can do that. And or alternatively, if council wants to do it tonight, then it would require that higher level majority.
Council, your wish? Councillor Merlehan?
I'm okay with going ahead with a vote tonight. I just was going to suggest that maybe those funds come out of any surplus money that comes back in the next, I don't know, I guess Richard will be able to tell us. I would suspect within the month, but I forget how that goes.
Mr. Petherick?
Thank you through you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, we are finalizing our year-end stuff. Typically, year-end results come to council sometime in the May-June period. But yeah, I think as I indicated to council, we're heading into a surplus position from 2021. So the way I would see it flowing is monies would come from our operating contingency because that's where the surplus would go. So it would kind of flow into the operating contingency, and then any funding council would decide would come out of that reserve.
Thank you. Do we have support for moving this forward this evening?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Mayor Shantz, okay. All right, so we do one vote first, or can we do them both at the same time, Clerk Smith?
Sorry, you would require a motion first to suspend the rules of procedure under the council's procedural bylaw to allow a motion to come on the floor tonight.
Okay, we have a mover, Mayor Shantz and Councillor Merlehan. All those in favor? And that is carried. And Councillor Martin, your motion? You're
Good. My motion is that we would take $10,000 out of our budget and give it to MCC to enhance some of their programs in Ukraine.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Merlehan? Further discussion? Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Chair Shantz. It's certainly not that I don't understand where this is coming from. 500,000 people, according to the UN, 500,000 people are now refugees who have fled Ukraine. I, like the other councillors, can't imagine what it would be like to wake up in the morning to air raid sirens. I remember sitting on my chair watching CNN, not knowing what was happening, and all of a sudden, almost out of nowhere, the invasion happened. 500,000 refugees, according to the UN. By most estimates, by people on the ground, that number's low. It's higher than that. I certainly understand the desire to do something. But there's 5.6 million. My quick Google search, the United Nations, the UNHCR estimates 5.6 million people have fled Syria. In Iraq, quick Google search, 1.2 million Iraqis internally displaced. How many refugees from Afghanistan? How many refugees from Sudan? How many refugees from Yemen? My heart breaks for the Ukrainian people. My heart breaks for all of the Canadians that are of Ukrainian descent and Russian descent, because the Russian people have nothing to do with this. This is one crazy despot. My heart breaks for all of them, but I will supporting all of those groups of people. So if we want to put some money forward, I'm all for it, but I don't know how we get to choose the Ukrainians over all those other lists of people that have been woken up by the exact same bombs, by the exact same air raid sirens, by the exact same type of invading force and occupying force. So I'm in favor of supporting, but not drawing a line somewhere between people we do support and we don't support.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilor Merlehan?
Yeah, through you, just a quick response to that. This isn't something unique to Woolwich Township. We have supported MCC causes through, taxes in the past. I can't think of the one in particular. I'm pretty sure Haiti was one of them. I think there was another one, one of my first or second years on council, and I, for the life of me, can't think of it, but it was going through the MCC is a well-known charity throughout the world that does, the $10,000 will go much further through their causes, and they reach a lot of different areas, some of the areas that you mentioned there. So I don't think this is out of character, and I understand on Twitter that there is that narrative going around, how dare we wake up because Ukrainians are white like us and things like that, and there are all sorts of atrocities in the world. I get that, but this is not out of character for Woolwich Township to support MCC and to give them a little bit of money that will go a long way. So I'm okay supporting that, the support we've given in the past, as well as things that they get involved with in the future for these unexplained and terrible things that happen all over the world.
Thank you. Councilor McMillan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I didn't say it was out of character, and I didn't assign motive for why. I'm not going to draw the line. I spoke about what I would do. I'm not going to draw the line.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed?
I'll abstain, Chair Shantz. I won't vote against it.
Thank you. Okay, that is carried. Thank you. And I'd just like to back up a little bit. I guess we never really did give direction on putting the OLT on the outstanding activity list. Council is okay with that, I'm assuming, with the comments that we've had? Thumbs up? Okay, yeah, okay. So we'll put that on the outstanding activity list. Any other things to come forward from council? Seeing none, I guess we have no notice of motion, so I'll call for adjournment. And Councilor Redekop, Mayor Shantz, all those in favor? And that is carried. Just closing remarks, council would like to thank all the participants who are tuned in to the meeting tonight and our YouTube live stream. I will remind council to stay connected until we receive confirmation that the live stream has stopped. And good night, everybody. Thank you.